for our Paris Roundtable, which I'm absolutely delighted to be moderating, our very first speaker is Lola Kerk. Hello, Lola. Lola is a visionary consultant in editorial programming. She is celebrated for her transformative work in the Paris region. Lola conducted a groundbreaking initiative in 2017, converting an historic 1876 absinthe distillery in a commune in the northeastern suburbs of Paris into an innovative, socially responsible, inclusive third place. Lola's leadership earned for the site a prestigious regional heritage label. Now, building on this work, Lola joined the Maison de la Conversation, the House of Conversation in my rough translation, where she spent the last 3 years crafting diverse social and cultural events. Lola planned the Learning Planet Festival and the political hackathons events, demonstrating her commitment to meaningful community engagement. Lola is dedicated to fostering learning and collaboration, to shaping, I should say, inclusive communities, and leaving an enduring mark through creative vision. So welcome, Lola.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm Lola Kerk, and I'm going to talk about the work I do at La Maison de la Conversation. And yes, the translation is right. It's the House of Conversation. So I'm the head of the events and programs department here in Paris. And La Maison de la Conversation is a place that promotes culture, social links, empowerment, and education through conversation. So yesterday, I have read the beginning of the article that David Wellman sent me about everyday diplomacy. And right now, I can say that my definition of diplomacy is the art of nurturing a bond that avoids conflict. So in order to have or to use diplomacy, we need conversation. And I realize that La Maison de la Conversation is an everyday diplomacy place. Every opinion, every point of view, every experiences are welcome to be shared and debated here. So the point is not to decide who is right or who is wrong, but it's to learn from others and to live with otherness. So we promote 5 values: inclusion, equality, usefulness, friendliness, and serendipity, or surprise, to be easier. We create and organize events such as festivals, exhibitions, meetups, performances, workshops, and training programs. And our major goal is to serve as a meeting location for people who wouldn't normally meet. And we really encourage diversity and inclusion. So we opened our door in 2021 as a semi-public place where visitors can also be programmers. It's a hybrid kind of place with a specific business model that provides services. And we provide to organizations consulting, soft skills training, or rental, space rental. And the profit of these activities fund the associative project that I manage. So in essence, the association finances itself in this way. And I'm very proud because 90% of all our programs are free and 10% super accessible and open to all. And my main target are the residents of the neighborhood that I'm going to call the community. And we provide for them quality and innovating experiences that also meet their needs. So we are located in the 18th district of Paris, at the border of the suburb, and in a community designated as QPV. It's basically priority city community for urban policy measures. And France counts about 1,500 QPV. And according to national studies, this community is ranked the 5th poorest in France. And here, 95% of the housing is public housing. And the statistics show a lot of fragility due to low skilled labor, unemployment, discrimination, and early school dropouts. Most of the citizens of the community, they don't vote for elections and they don't participate to the democratic life. So yes, as you can imagine, this community has a lot of needs, but fortunately, there's also a strong and powerful associative dynamic that is super active. There's a real relationship and a lot of partnership have grown between us. And everything La Maison de la Conversation develop or build is done with this associative partnership. And I love to say that the more we are, the stronger we are, the more accurate and intelligent we are. So yes, those partnerships are without a doubt a key of our community's cohesion. So in this perspective, we create long-time projects. So it could last 1, 2, or 3 years. And we are currently developing an international project with a Belgian artist to prototype new governances of rooftops in Paris, Barcelona, Brussels, and Marrakesh. And Paris is developing a social aspect of this governance based on our community. So we are going to invite and create assemblies with the community, the mayor office, the public housing landlord, artists, and also social and urban designer. The purpose is to think, to design and create prototypes of different governances that involve the community in critical decision, like using buildings rooftop as resource producers to redistribute those resources into the community. For example, if the assembly decide to build solar panels in the rooftop, they can also imagine to redistribute the energy into the building and into the community. So this prototype is going to be referenced at a European level. We also have events. So we partner with artists, students, associations, media, and experts on conversation to create multifaceted, multidisciplinary, and culturally diverse events, which exhibit innovations. And the goal is to bring culture, art, education, and empowerment tools through fun events. We also have meetups. So it's through a theme, a topic, or and a conversational format. We invite the people to talk and exchange their views and experiences. So I wanted to share one of the programs, one of the meetups. It's called the Human Library. And we organized already that several times on the topic of diversity and differences. So it works like a real library where you can borrow a book, except here it's a human book that you can borrow for 30 minutes face-to-face. The books share their personal and impactful stories, whether dealing with discrimination, sexism, handicap, or life and death situation. And then the story led place to an open conversation at the end. And listening those stories and how they impacted those books, those person, can really change how the listener deal with the topic. We have also workshops and training programs. So here the purpose is to dive deeper into the skill developments, especially soft skills, to empower the public. And we are currently promoting a 5-day training program on transformation through soft skills. And we are going to mix 2 different public, juvenile offenders and social and associative worker. So the juvenile offender develop their skills and meet people that could continue to mentor them. As you can understand, we have a strong local anchor. And that was my main concern when I started to work on the project 3 years ago, how to be the most useful for the community. And our focus is to bring a new national or international perspective and innovations into the community. On the other hand, from a micro to a macro scale, we are directly working with the local city hall office from our district, and their role is to execute the public policies on a local scale. And we managed to create a strong relationship. They are really involved in the associative network and the programs we elaborate. And they have also needs, especially on mediation expertise or mobilizing public. So it's a win-win relationship. However, it's more difficult to create a strong and ongoing relationship with the Paris City Hall, the region or ministries, except for huge events like the Olympics and the Paralympics game. So here, the Olympics and Paralympics game and the City Hall, the Paris City Hall, they have been funding a lot of associative projects through Call of Project. And yes, those projects have definitely a positive impact on how the representatives portray Paris internationally. So to conclude, now I really hope that after the COVID rescue policies and the euphoria of the Olympics game, the budget are going to allow the associative networks to continue to develop themselves, to work in consortium with communities for a greater future. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lola. That was really a lovely and extremely informative introduction to your own particular work, but also to give us a sense of the sorts of problems that you and so many other people are trying to address. So thank you very much for that. I now turn to our second speaker, Raphael Tisblat. Raphael actually calls himself a dialogue entrepreneur, a term that I love, have not heard before. Raphael is a practitioner in the fields of conflict resolution and inter-identity dialogue. He is based in Paris, as you might imagine. He's the Director of Innovation and Design at Soliya, an online-based NGO promoting the field of virtual exchange. Raphael designs and leads dialogue programs between youth from North America, Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. And between 2014 and 2021, he was the Director of Programming at the Muslim Jewish Conference, which is a grassroots interreligious organization connecting young Muslims and Jews from around the world. Raphael is now the president of the nonprofit Connecting Actions that helps reinforce the professional field of dialogue. And he recently launched a European coalition of civil society organizations for intercultural and interbelief bridge building, the European Institute for Dialogue. Raphael recently launched also the French podcast Anti-Clash, to show, that's my English rendition, to show what dialogue sounds like on the most controversial topics. And with over 20 years of experience, Raphael has trained, mediated, and facilitated thousands of youth and adults across antagonistic communities. Raphael has a master's degree in international relations, I understand, from the Sorbonne, another in conflict resolution from the University of Bradford in England, and yet another, I believe, from Sciences Po in Paris. So, Raphael, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you and to hear your thoughts. So the floor is yours. Raphael, welcome.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. So thank you for the introduction, the long introduction as well. It's true, I've been doing this work, conflict resolution and dialogue, for many years in various settings and for different types of beneficiaries. So yes, I lead this organization called Connecting Actions, which is Paris-based, which is trying to reinforce the field of citizen, intercultural, interconvictional dialogue through capacity building and network forming. And so we convene opportunities for all actors of peace and social cohesion to come together, share knowledge and resources, and engage in joint projects. And so there are different ways I and the organizations and networks I work with build bridges in and around Paris, and they all have to do with dialogue. So some of those ways are about offering safe spaces for dialogue between or within communities. So we're talking about women's groups, men groups, parents groups, students groups, interreligious, intercultural dialogues. We're talking about dialogue for young people, talking about their place in society, or about intercommunal relations, for instance, or dialogue for adults, speaking about the latest controversies affecting Parisians, or even militants of political parties to share their different perspectives on the party line, et cetera, et cetera. So safe spaces for dialogue. Another way is, another way of building bridges in the city is in partnership with other local organizations. It's about providing skill building trainings for all types of groups, including marginalized groups in the Parisian suburbs who need to build their skills, defending their dignity and also acquiring capacity to achieve their life goals in a non-violent and a non-confrontational manner. So we also go to middle and high schools in disadvantaged areas of Paris to sensitize students on certain political topics and their roles as citizens. We also sensitize them to the risks of manipulation and radicalization on social media, for instance. So, this type of work is also really key to, I think, both reinforce their citizenship and reconnect them with their institutions and their societies. And I would say the last way of building bridges is about advocating for more dialogue, including on the most controversial topics. So as you said, we launched this new podcast. It's in French. So for those of you speaking French, I encourage you to take a look. It's called Anti-Clash. And this podcast basically typically invites citizens who disagree on a controversial topic to have constructive dialogue, to learn from their differences and preserve their respect and humanization of each other, right? So there we show to the general public what dialogue looks like on topics that we are now all convinced that are impossible to address without clashing, right? Gender, religion, race, democracy, Israel, Palestine. And so, it's impossible for me not to talk about this topic, Israel, Palestine, because I can tell you that right now the entire community of peace builders and dialogue practitioners has been directly impacted by what's been happening in the past 2 weeks. This is one of the biggest global challenges of our time, one that really deepens the divides between the communities that make our social fabric, and it makes our work much more challenging. Paris is certainly a city where the conflict resonates a lot, to the point that we often observe what looks like an importation of the conflict. And it has been the case for the past, 35 years, since the first Intifada. So, that's why Connecting Actions basically has decided to partner with the Alliance for Middle East Peace, which is another international NGO supporting over 100 Palestinian and Israeli organizations working for peace, whose director is also based in Paris, to build capacity among local civil society actors to learn how to address this subject with their public without confrontation. So last year, for instance, we convened leaders of 15 different community and interfaith organizations to share their experiences and learn together on how to address this topic in a constructive way, even between people and young people who strongly disagree on that topic. So we did that. We also invited Palestinian and Israeli peace actors from the region to connect with those Parisian leaders and build networks of solidarity. So you see, there are, yes, also in Paris, many ways in which local and international actors partner already. What better way to not import the conflict than learning from the first affected people who still work for peace, even though they are in the midst of this conflict. And so this is an ongoing project, and one that is, I think, more needed than ever. And today, the participants to that initiative are continuing to be in touch. And one thing I'm proud of is that, despite their strong opinions on either side, they continue to dialogue respectfully and preserve their relationships. So, we need more of those spaces where we learn to engage with difference peacefully, and that is tough work. It's tough work, and I think there are two main needs for the field of urban diplomacy at the moment. One of them is funding, of course. Lola mentioned it already, but I would say philanthropy and public grants, shouldn't be the only way for us to do the work we do. why is it that one can make millions trading stocks when so many people work to actually keep society together and basically earn nothing, right? I think we need a big paradigm shift, but that's a big ambition, of course. But I think this work is definitely not valued enough. One of the big dreams I have is that mediation and facilitation would be completely inserted in the economy, because we realize that is what brings growth, not just in the capitalistic sense, but growth and development. And the other need I would mention is that of professionalism. I think many people do this type of work out of good intentions, but they're not enough. And it is also, I think, damaging the image of this field to the general public. Dialogue cannot be perceived just as a good intention, type of hippie, tree hugger, idealistic kind of activity. So one of the objectives of Connecting Actions is to actually give a professional and scientific base to this work and make it more known and more credible and accessible to citizens and institutions. And another need, and one of Connecting Actions also goals is more collaboration between all actors of peace and social cohesion. There are many actors out there, but individually, no one, I think, can make a significant difference. And the times where we felt we achieved something were times where we were not alone, right? So forces of division have shown that they're very good at collaborating, even when they present significant ideological differences. And so forces of union absolutely have to show the same capacity. But collaborating also takes time and energy at the beginning. It's an investment, and I think the capital for that investment is still missing. So collaboration is needed among urban diplomats of the same city and between cities, just like national experiences and initiatives feed off of other national contexts. And Connecting Action has led the creation of European Institute for Dialogue to do just that, to share experiences, resources, and joint projects at a European, national, city, and community level. And we're going to expand this project I mentioned, civil society leader capacity building projects that we initiated in Paris at a European level, starting with Berlin and Berlin-based organizations, because we know Berlin and Paris have a lot to learn from each other when it comes to social cohesion and intercommunal tension. And I think more and more cities are facing the same issues. I also want to say that another thing that I think is very needed is for urban diplomats to collaborate more with city diplomats. And I'm offering a transition for Lauren to speak as well, but more collaboration with city diplomats and city leaders in general. I think we need local governments to facilitate and support the work of civil society organizations and actions. I would love, for instance, to see the creation of a city fund for urban diplomacy, for instance, and this could be, I don't know, an international fund where various cities around the world partner to multiply and support those spaces for social cohesion. But beyond financial support, I also wish there was more direct co-working between civil society and institutional actors. Both have unique perspectives on the city's needs, and both, I think, can benefit from each other's capacities. And both the current city administration and the Parisian civil society support the idea of dialogue and support dialogue initiatives. But I think each of them tends to launch initiatives rather independently. I think it would have a profound impact on Paris, and Paris would have a profound impact on other places if both levels would have more opportunities to work together, basically. It would be great, for instance, if the city of Paris would support the initiative I mentioned, on Israel-Palestine, to bringing more peace actors from Israel and Palestine, but also from other cities and countries around the world, to share their experiences with Parisians, and Parisians forming networks of solidarity with them and adding their support to those foreign actors, right? This is just an idea. But yeah, I think, we have enough cases for social divisions, and they cannot be taken lightly. And so we need to support and open more spaces like the Maison de la Conversation, for instance, and other such places, and hire and train facilitators to hold them in order to provide an alternative to the type of confrontation we see on media, on social media as well. I think citizens direly need to connect and also sometimes humanize each other, and I think citizen dialogue can really support them in that way.
Thanks so much, Raphael. You do, in fact, have 3 minutes credit. And I'm going to jump in and ask you if you wouldn't mind just explaining one term that you use that many of us may not have heard before, and that is the idea of interconvictional dialogue. I wonder if you could just take a minute or two to explain to us what that means.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a term that is being used more and more, at least among civil society actors that I know. It is basically intended to be, originally it was intended to be more encompassing than just interreligious dialogue, because interreligious dialogue in the field of dialogue in general is pretty developed, has been pretty developed over the years, but there is a sense that that term interreligious may put aside some people who would not consider themselves as religious or even belonging to any type of religious background. So interconvictional was meant to first encompass also atheists and agnostics, and people who don't have any religion. Lately, this term has actually expanded to be supposed to include all types of beliefs, all types of convictions, right? So other philosophies outside of their relationships with spirituality or religion. So this is meant to just say that we want to bring in people who have different worldviews in general. So that word interconvictional is something that has been used more and more in France, to some extent in Europe as well. And I know that the Gray School of Applied Diplomacy is keen on using that term as well. So.
Thank you so much, Raphael, for a really wonderful introduction to what you're doing and the many aspirations you have, and I think that all of us will share. So let me turn now to our final speaker, and this is Lauren Jimenez. Welcome, Lauren. Lauren has been Deputy General Delegate for International Relations for the City of Paris since January 2022. And in that capacity, Lauren oversees the City of Paris's international cooperation and solidarity activities. Now, before joining the Paris administration, Lauren spent 10 years working for La Francophonie, which is, I suppose, the French equivalent of the Commonwealth, which English speakers might be aware of. And so La Francophonie is a multilateral organization of some 88 states and governments. And at the organization, she oversaw political and democratic governance issues, including working in the office of the Secretary General. And I believe, Lauren, that Boutros Boutros-Ghali is a former Secretary General of La Francophonie. Now, prior to all this, Lauren held several positions with the French Ministry of European and Foreign Affairs, and also worked with the United Nations Under-Secretary General for Peacekeeping Operations. That is quite a vitae, Lauren. She also holds a postgraduate degree in public law and political science from the Sorbonne. So, Lauren, you're very welcome, and we look forward to what you have to tell us.
Hi, thank you so much, Geoffrey. I hope my connection will be stable. Even in Paris, we can face some problems with the connections, the internet connection. So thank you so much, Geoffrey, and thank you, Lola and Raphael for the words before. I'm really delighted to take part in this roundtable discussion organized by the Gray School of Applied Diplomacy of DePaul University. Thank you again. So for my part, I will present the City of Paris diplomatic initiatives, its ambitions, its drivers, and try to discuss how, in my opinion, city diplomacy can be articulated with grassroots initiatives, i.e. the urban diplomacy, if I understand well. Considering that diplomacy is about first promoting leadership, second gaining recognition, third, influence global policy, and lastly, securing resources to action. And that's quite a key point, I think. So perhaps just in introduction, just to remind that for many years, the city of Paris has chosen to be proactive in international actions. I emphasize the voluntary nature of this, because usually it's not the responsibility of municipality under French law to do international action. It is therefore a deliberate choice made by successive mayors in Paris, and even amplified by the current mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo. Of course, the historic commitment on the international stage for Paris is quite self-evident, given its exceptional position. At the capital of France, one of the UN Security P5, of course, Paris is home of more than 170 bilateral and multilateral diplomatic representations. The World Bank, the IMF, and the European Commission have also offices here in Paris. We also host the headquarters of a dozen international organizations, such as UNESCO, the OECD, le Bureau International des Expositions, and as you mentioned, the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, which I quite know. Many major international conferences have been held in Paris, such as, for the most famous, the Chaillot Conference that led to the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1988, and the Paris Agreement for Climate in 2015. Paris is therefore, by its very nature, a city with an international vocation. And this exposure has enabled Paris to exist and influence internationally. It has also led the city to become both a subject and a player in international relations by developing its own international policy under the impetus of its various mayors. This international policy is marked by thematic priority. When you think of Paris, we think of human rights, we think about climate and culture in particular. But it also marked by the promotion of our administrations, know-how, and our expertise that is now increasingly recognized and in demand from a lot of different partners. Every year, we received here at the municipality over 100 of foreign delegations, which are interested in discovering our most innovative public policies. That's quite a lot. And this international orientation is also reflected in our municipal policies in a various way. Firstly, through cooperatives program, which with cities around the world. Although Paris is a twin with only one city, Rome, they are sister cities, we have pacts of friendships and cooperation with almost 70 other local authorities over the world. And we are involved in around 20 structured cooperation projects, mobilizing the expertise of our technical teams with, for instance, Nouakchott, Montreal, Berlin, Phnom Penh, Yaoundé, Bethlehem, Kigali. So it's quite diverse. And we cooperate with the cities projects in the fields of urban planning, of course, a lot, adapting cities to climate change, culture, social policies, urban agriculture, and soft mobility, or again, greening. Paris also provides financial support via subsidies for international projects run by Parisian or French non-profit organizations, and that's something you raised, Raphael. This is quite an important point for us because it's very key to also support the action of the non-profit organizations. I think it's more than 3 million per year we commit with the support for the NGOs. Several calls for projects are open to NGOs each year, notably in the fields of water and sanitation, in culture, for the SDGs, health, or human rights. So this is for projects who are run in foreign countries, not in Paris. Perhaps last but by no means least, Paris participates also in a number of international networks most often in a leadership role within the United Cities and local governments. I don't know if you are familiar with that. It's the UCGLG, sorry. The C40, the Global Covenant of Mayors, l'Association Internationale des Maires Francophones, Eurocities, etc. So, and this commitment at the international level is at the end reflected in the figures. Annually, Paris commits more than 6.5 million euros to official development aid, which is a lot, 77 million if we include in this all refugee policies we are running. This makes Paris leading contributor to official development assistance as a local government. Nevertheless, despite undoubtedly being one of the world's most active cities in terms of international initiatives, the ambition of Paris comes up against some constraints and sometimes also some obstacles. First of all, the recognition of cities and more broadly of local authorities as players in international relations is far from satisfactory. We still strive to make ourselves heard in international discussions, even when cities have relevant skills and expertise. Furthermore, the level of decentralization and therefore of independence from the central government varies enormously worldwide. Consequently, the direct access to funding, including from international financial institutions, remains problematic and extremely limited for local governments, even though they are at the front line when it comes to tackling the major challenges of our time, like welcoming the refugees or combating or adapting to climate change. Despite these constraints, the city of Paris, like other local governments, is increasingly asserting itself at the negotiating table. I think we have proven our capacity to respond to main challenges where states and governments have often failed to do so. Local governments are an asset, and this is particularly true when it comes to ecological transition. Almost 10 years after the Paris climate agreements, the main players are far from meeting their commitments, while local players are now moving faster than at state level. And we are moving faster because we have no choice. And local government must take measures to ensure that their cities and their inhabitants adapt to the consequences of climate change. We have to do greening, we have to develop shared and soft mobilities, we have to assure a shelter for those most vulnerable to heat waves, or also coping with the growing risk of flooding. And I think that our advocacy is beginning to bear fruit. For instance, at the next COP in Dubai, the next COP should reinforce this momentum. At the initiative of the COP28 presidency, and with Bloomberg also, a summit for local climate action, chaired by John Kerry and his Chinese counterpart, will bring together 1,000 mayors and numerous heads of state. And that's a first, that's really a premiere. This is an encouraging sign of a broader multilateralism on climate issues. The impact of city diplomacy is also tangible, I think, in the context of interstate crisis, because we are, as local governments, less caught up in competition or burdened by the weight of history. Cities can maintain dialogue or even cooperation when relations between states at state level become tense. We are currently witnessing this in the context of growing tensions between France and the Western world in general, and certain African countries. Without renouncing our commitment to democracy and human rights, we still at local level continue to work with our local partners for the benefit of the population and thus preserving links. We can also, sorry, I need to, okay. In context of political, humanitarian and security crisis, we also think that local governments are in a position to support or even drive large scales or local mobilizations. Paris, at the instigation of its mayor, regularly organizes actions to support, to raise public awareness, or to provide humanitarian aid and even welcome refugees. I can give you perhaps 2 examples. From the start of Russia's war in Ukraine, Paris has been heavily involved on a political level, of course, with a strong action by the mayor of Paris. We give the honorary citizenship to the city of Kiev, with which we have signed a pact of friendship and cooperation. And the mayor have been, I think, 4 times in Ukraine since 2020. In addition, more than €1 million in subsidies have been decided by the Paris Council for humanitarian aid, both in Ukraine and neighboring countries, and also in Paris, to ensure the decent welcome for Ukrainian refugees. Parisians have also expressed themselves, their solidarity with Ukraine through in-kind donations. We have these in-kind donations permitted to constitute 3 shipments that left Paris in the spring of 2020 for Kiev and Cracovia. Perhaps another example should be with the situation of Nagorno-Karabakh in Armenia, not in Armenia, close to Armenia, which has also recently mobilized the city of Paris. In addition to humanitarian aid granted by Paris over the last few months to help the people deprived of resources and to support access to healthcare in the area, the Paris Council has also adopted several political resolutions in support of Armenia and the people of the region. And this summer, the mayor of Paris took the initiative of mobilizing the main French cities and regions to organize a major humanitarian convoy to Nagorno-Karabakh. Some 20 trucks were filled with essential goods. On site, the mayors alerted international players to the dramatic situation facing by the Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh. To carry out our advocacy and be effective in the field, city diplomacy is developing on the principle that there is strength in numbers. Local authorities have been organizing themselves into networks for decades, essential when it comes to climate issue. For instance, the C40, which the mayor of Paris chaired from 2016 and 2019, I think, and she's now the European Vice President. So the P40 brings together the world's leading metropolises, which is key when it comes to climate change. We also work with the newly created Commission on Sustainable City Finance that the Mayor Hidalgo is co-chairing, along with Jeffrey Sachs, the special advisor to the United Nations Secretary Generals, so Jeffrey Sachs, and with the Mayor of Rio, Eduardo Paes. So the mission of this commission is to propose financing solutions for cities to foster ecological transitions and SDGs. Perhaps to conclude, because I think I've been a bit long, I would like perhaps to highlight the links between city diplomacy we are carrying out and urban diplomacy, which Lola Kirk and Raphael has presented in detail before me. Perhaps the strike force of cities committed to international development is also, if not above all, based on local dynamics. In a city like Paris, the diaspora, for instance, are a tremendous asset when it comes to opening up to the world. They solicit us and solicit our help, and we provide sometimes through subsidies, through the possibility for them to organize initiatives in our municipal locations. But this diaspora also guide us, challenge us, and enable us to broaden the scope of our actions, both domestically and abroad. We also rely heavily on and work closely with the dense network of Paris-based nonprofit organizations in many areas. We finance some of their solidarity projects, as I said. We co-organize major events and draw on their expertise to conduct cooperation programs with our partners. And perhaps just a last point I will end on. and Lola just mentioned that. It's the 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games. There will be, of course, it will be, of course, a major time for Paris and its influence. Internationally, of course, since Paris will be welcoming the world, but also at local level, as the ambition of Paris is to seize the opportunity of these games to transform the city for a more sustainable and more inclusive city by putting its inhabitants at the center of the project. And Paris is encouraging and supporting numerous initiatives involving the city's residents, in particular schools or working class neighborhoods, to make the games their own and to instill the values of Olympism. So I truly believe that that players in urban diplomacy, therefore, complement those in city diplomacy. And we share a common approach to international relations, which is anchored in pragmatism and with the common aim of promoting the well-being of the citizen. Thank you.
Lauren, thank you so very much for that wonderful talk. And I'm absolutely thrilled that you finish up by addressing a question that was on my mind and that you and the others might want to come back to. And that is, you know, most of us do actually have this perception of Olympics as spectacle. Olympics, we go back to the Beijing Olympics, perhaps as the high point of that notion. And the fact that you and the city of Paris are trying to make this games for the people is, I think, something that is true to the Olympic spirit, I think, in which most of us would hold a high value. So I was absolutely delighted to hear you talk about that at the end. So thank you. Now, I just want to remind everyone that if you do have a question in the audience, then please just go to the Q&A portal at the bottom of your screen, and you can just type in a question there to any or all of our speakers. So I do have a couple of questions, and the first one comes from someone who prefers to remain anonymous, and so this is the question is: the work of everyone on this panel is so rich and far-reaching. What do you see as the most effective channels through which Parisian urban and city diplomats can deepen their level of cooperation and collaboration? Raphael mentioned that municipal funding for those who do community-based and grassroots work would be extremely helpful. What are some of the other ways that these two groups, citizens, I guess, can work together and help each other on a deeper level? Now, I think, why don't I go back to Lola to give Lauren a breather, and we can start with Lola and then Raphael and Lauren. If you would like to answer that question, some of you have in fact already addressed it in some ways, and so if you can build on what you've said, that would be really wonderful. So Lola, I wonder if I could invite you to speak firstly on this question.
Yeah, so I understand how we can have more bridges, build more bridges between us. That's a tricky question. Because we are, La Maison de la Conversation, we are definitely working, I would say, more from a macro to a micro. So we definitely want to bring an international or national perspective into the community. So definitely we are not really working with officials, but definitely more with foreign cultures, foreign artists, foreign experts also. So that's definitely my main concern. So it's really to build more bridges with international culture. That would be that kind of bridges.
Very nice. Raphael, I wonder if you would like to join at this point and perhaps elaborate a little on the point that you were making.
Right. Like I said, funding is definitely, needed, more needed. And, I know that Paris is definitely spending a lot already. It's probably not enough, not just because, it's just because the needs are so big. I also mentioned that I think maybe even more important in the long run than just funding is the ability for those institutions, local institutions, local government, the city office, etc., to really have working sessions with some, you know, civil society actors like Maison de la Conversation, like Connecting Actions, and you know, there are many others. One challenge probably would be to, you know, find a way to select those organizations, because there are so many, you know, there are thousands of organizations in Paris, you know, civil society. Not all of them work specifically towards, you know, social cohesion and you know, and diplomacy, as you know, the way we talk about it today. So I'm sure there would be a way to, you know, call for, you know, all those initiatives that really, you know, are in this field of building bridges between communities, between groups who don't get to meet otherwise. And so yeah, I would say the one thing that I'd like to see more, because like I said, you know, there are initiatives that are, you know, initiated by civil society actors like ours, and there are initiatives, you know, held by the government or, you know, the local governments, and those initiatives are not, they're rarely, you know, in my knowledge, you know, co-designed, you know, together and co-implemented. And so I would love to see more of that, you know, co-working, you know, co-elaborating and co-implementing, you know, efforts from those two levels of governance. Because I think, you know, when you think about governance today, when you think about democracy, everybody knows, and you know, the local governments know as well, you know, civil society is a major actor of that governance, because you know, institutions cannot be everywhere. So so yes, so I do think our perspectives can really complement each other, and our capacities as well, and you know, our ability to elaborate diagnostics about what is really the issues, you know, what are the issues that affect the social fabric and social cohesion in the city. So yeah, just more time to really elaborate, you know, tools for peace locally together.
Very good. Thank you so much. Lauren, I wonder if you wanted to add a little bit to what you actually spoke about in your remarks on this particular question.
Quite briefly, I'll try. Perhaps, of course, it's very important that we should find better ways to cooperate and to perhaps exchange more often with the institutional level that the city of Paris represents, and with the local-based organizations, and not only the main NGOs who have their headquarters in Paris. Of course, Paris is the capital, so we have a lot of headquarters of the main NGOs, but with the very local organization, the one who are very linked with the communities, it's quite important, because our policy will not have any sense if it's not understood by the population of Paris, and especially when it comes to international relations, to peace, or to global challenges. We also make sure that we have the support of the population and the community. Perhaps I will try just to talk about two initiatives that Paris has run. One is quite from a long term now. It's the Maison de la Vie Associative et de la Citoyenneté. In English, I will translate that with the House of Associations and Citizenship, and I'm sure Lola knows them. This is just special places where all NGOs, local NGOs in Paris, can have access to information, to spaces, to work, and to also host some of their events. And it is quite interesting, because we try also to give services to the local association on the ground, to make sure they can work all together also. So I think it's quite interesting as a public services. The second, it's perhaps an example of what could be this kind of a place where the institutions meets the local society, the civil society, on specific subjects. It's what we call l'Académie du Climat, the Academy on Climate. So it's in the former mairie d'arrondissement, local municipality, because Paris is divided in districts, and we have, in the first district, we have this municipality, this building, that has been dedicated 2 years ago to host all initiatives led by either institutions or associations, local organizations on climate change. And it hosts conferences, roundtables, practical activities, and this is a place where the people, and especially young people, can meet and work all together on climate change. And this is really, I mean, if you have to go to Paris soon, I hope so, go there. You will see what kind of energy you can find them there, how the local and the young activists also, they force us, the institution, to go further in our work and our commitment. So this is quite a great place, I think, and it could be seen as an example.
Thank you so much, Lauren. It is wonderful to hear you talk about Paris, because I think most of us have this general perception, misguided, that Paris is this great city of international conferences. And what I think you're reassuring me about, at least, is this idea that Paris is actually backing up this idea of it being a venue of choice to actually trying to promote the policies that it actually holds conferences on, from climate all the way going back, let's say, the Paris Peace Conference of 1990. So it was really wonderful to hear you talk about that. A question that I have, this is a question for Lola, I believe, and the question, a student starts with, "Bonjour, Lola," and Carly asks, "I'm curious what the process looks like of choosing who is going to be a human book."
Yeah. It could be complicated to have some volunteers. It depends really of the topic of the human library. For example, yes, diversity and differences, it's not easy at all, because we are doing, of course, call of volunteers. So we are talking with our partner, the Associative Network, to find some volunteers in the public that we have in the community. But it's not that easy to speak about that kind of things, discriminations, handicap. So there's not a lot of volunteers. So it's a lot of work. If we can have for a human library 6 human books, we are really happy. So that is the first thing of the process. Then we need to have some interview with those volunteers to see if this story is digested, if it's like a past story. If you're still dealing with these issues, you can't be a book, because the emotion that you have toward this story, or this story, could have really an impact on the dialogue that you're going to have with the listener. So it's like a real long process to recruit, to have this meeting, these first interviews, and then you have to build the story. So it can be like maybe easier to listen and really constructed. So that's how we do. Thanks for the question.
You're
Thank
muted,
you so much, Lola. So I'm going to finish up with 2 questions. One of them is really a comment directed at I think, Lauren, and the second one for Raphael. I'm going to flag, Raphael, the question I have for you, and that is, how do you reconcile the demands, the impulses, the energy of activism with professionalism? But I'm going to give you a second or two to think about that, because in the meantime, that will be the last comment or question, if you like. In the meantime, I've had another question from Robert Dry. Robert, as David mentioned, a very good friend of the Gray School, former US Foreign Service officer. And Robert says, I want to attest to what Lauren Jimenez mentioned, particularly regarding city-to-city dialogue. In 2008, while serving as conseiller scientifique at the US Embassy in Paris, I served as control officer for the visit to Paris of then New York City Mayor Bloomberg. The purpose of his visit was to dialogue with the French government and the mayor of Paris about environmental climate issues, matters then not high on the agenda of US President Bush. The US ambassador at the time, Stapleton, nonetheless saw the utility of the visit of Bloomberg. He promoted the visit by hosting a range of figures from cultural, cuisine, science, education in Paris to his home to meet with Bloomberg's delegation. Bloomberg met with then French Environmental Minister Bourlou, an incredibly powerful figure in the Sarkozy government. And Robert says, I was taken by Ms. Jimenez's discussion about Bloomberg's continuing efforts. So Lauren, I think that is really a comment, a congratulatory comment rather than the question. But if there's anything you wanted to say, please feel free.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Mr. Dragh. Bloomberg was a visionary in terms of city-to-city dialogue, and I think we all benefit, all the local governments who are active on international debate and especially on climate change. We all benefit from its dedication, of course, its influence. Bloomberg can bring with him a lot of people and some key stakeholders. And we still rely on his support. He's still active, even if he's of course retired from for a long time now, but he's still really active and still very helpful in order to open some doors for the local governments with key governments actors, so we can be heard. We can work with them and make sure that the local government voices can be heard and taken into account when it comes to climate change.
Thank you so much, Lauren. And Raphael, how do you reconcile the impulses of activism with professionalism?
Right. That's I didn't see the question on the list of questions, but that's an interesting one. I mean, the way I understand the question is, how do you reconcile being an activist for dialogue, right, and at the same time being professional? You know, I mean, this really, in a sense, I am myself an answer to that question, in the sense that I've been passionate about this field for a long time, since I was a teenager, really, and I've been really very interested in issues of peace and conflict, and I'm passionate, but I have a personality that's rather conflict avoidant. And I realized over the years that that's not the way to solve conflicts if you're avoiding conflicts. And so, I've worked to really, in order to satisfy, to fulfill some of the ambition that I have to, contribute to peace, I've had to do a lot of work, to study, of course, but also to learn, to work on myself, first of all, to understand why I'm so conflict avoidant and what really, what makes me uncomfortable with conflict, and so work on myself, become more self-aware of my own, limitations and capacities, and then learn skills, skills to listen deeply, to ask the powerful and useful questions, to help a group learn, including when they're diverse and have different worldviews, learn tools, how to create an actual safe space to enable those constructive dialogues. I think passion is actually the key to become more professional, because that will really, I think, when I train facilitators of dialogue, I always say passion is an important aspect of what you're going to do, because you need to mobilize a certain level of energy to really, to cultivate that multi-partial, and that's a word that I've often used, but it would require a bit of explanation, but, to cultivate that multi-partiality, that ability to listen to all voices, to listen to them, to not necessarily judge them, except when they're hateful, for instance, or disrespectful or violent, but, to learn to listen to all types of opinions, and to work towards making a group more inclusive, and more accepting of differences, to work on the relationship between different people. All of that requires, energy, and so it requires some level of passion and activism. So I do think that professionalism is the best way to achieve your goals as an activist.
That's a wonderful answer, Raphael, and a wonderful way to finish up. We do have one final question that really is a very big one from another one of our students, Pat Dickinson. And Pat, and I'll just put it on the table because I think we'll have to take it up in other sessions. Within the next few decades, urban populations will increase dramatically as many people continue to relocate to urban areas worldwide. How do we prepare for such a situation with sometimes closed-minded citizenry? But I am going to wrap it up there in preparation for the very next session. And it only remains for me to thank Lola, Raphael, and Lauren for an absolutely fabulous panel and roundtable. And thanks so much for informing us with so much information, so much insight, and with so much passion. Thanks again. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.